Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, January the 31st, 2021. It is currently 9:11 a.m. Central Time. I'm here inside of the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church. Yes, in less than an hour, I'm supposed to be back on the air for the Sunday School Hour, but I am making a decision here. I'm making a decision to play some audio. I'm going to have to do my very best to try to edit this audio while I'm live on the air. I'm going to have to, I've got a timestamp written down here where at least I know one situation where something's going to be said that I need to lower the volume. So basically, I've got an audio clip that contains some explicit language, and I'm going to do my best to try to edit it out live. Yeah, I'm going to be trying to do the editing live, which is a little bit dangerous, but I'm going to do my very best. So just be warned that the audio I have does contain some explicit language, but in spite of its explicit language that I'm going to try to edit out, I think it is a powerful audio. I think it's a powerful listen because it really brings up an important concept. Even though that may not have been their intention, I believe the audio contains a very important perspective that I want us all to consider, all right? And I'm going to start by I'm going to offer kind of a theory, well, not really a theory. I'm going to offer an idea. I'm going to offer kind of a principle that I believe is absolutely true. And I think that we are witnessing the truth of this. I think we've witnessed the truth of this principle play out right in front of us over the past few years. Okay, I think for over 4 years, we have seen this play out over and over and over. And I think that this is something Christians really need to think about and try to see this maybe a little differently, okay? Here is the principle. As human beings, we are created in the image of God. Now, that image is obviously not a physical image, but we are created in the image of God, that there's certain things about us that reflect the image of God. And one of those things is obviously God is a spirit, and we are created in the image of God, so there is a spiritual part of us. There is a spiritual part of us. We could talk about the soul. We could talk about different aspects of human beings, but there is something in us that just understands and craves and desires that which is spiritual, that which transcends our existence. We just, in deep down, we know inside of us that there is a creator, there is more to this life, there has to be a purpose, there has to be a meaning that goes beyond it. And that's why no matter where you go no matter where you go in the world, no matter where you look in human history, every civilization has some form of religion, some belief in God, some form of spirituality, even in countries where they try to persecute and remove and destroy religion. You cannot just get rid of this thing that's inside of us, because we are created in the image of God and there is a spiritual aspect to us. But here's what happens whenever people move away from biblical, historical Christianity, whenever they move away from the true God, they will always replace God with some other kind of worship, some other kind of faith, some other kind of belief. It may be the worship of self, but there's always some kind of spirituality that they usually replace it with. Now, yes, I understand some people become atheist and they say they don't believe in the supernatural, they don't believe in God, but trust me, they're in themselves, there is still some form of worship, there's some form of faith, there's some form of a belief system that's not even consistent with their materialistic atheism most of the time. There's always exceptions, but I'm saying in general, that's just the way it naturally works, because we are created in the image of God. And because our culture is moving further and further away from the Bible, from God, from Christianity, you're going to see them replace that faith they had in God, that faith that the culture had in God, in Scripture, they're going to replace, as they move further and further away from that, they're going to find things to replace it. And we are witnessing this take place. You are seeing more and more people who have abandoned Christianity's morality, but then turn to a desire for like they almost recreate their own system of morality. They recreate it as, we need to fight for social justice, and we need to fight for this, and we need to fight for that. And you're like, okay, so what is this based off of? Is this based off that you believe all human beings have some inherent value because they were created? Or do you believe in creation? Or do you believe in evolution? And if we're just evolved animals, then where do you get this idea of morality? But they've left Christianity, but they're trying to recreate, in a sense, their own religions, their own systems of faith that have morality, they have right and wrong, they have truth and error. They recreate their own form of religion, whether it gets involved in, social justice and trying to change society and their way. They have, basically, you have their leaders that kind of serve as their kind of priests, their pastors. There's teaching. There is then action that we're going to do this and we're going to do that. There is condemnation of certain ideas and certain beliefs. They just have replaced Christianity with different religions. And we have, sometimes so it may be social justice and social involvement. It turns to politics. Here's our leaders, here's our teachers, and you're the heretic, and we have the truth. You're condemned. We have the way basically to salvation. You have the way to destruction. They just replace Christianity with politics. Or they replace Christianity with conspiracy theories. I believe the QAnon conspiracy theory, yes, at times they still merge it. They try to merge it with some aspects of Christianity at times. It is really it's just evidence of people moving away from historical biblical Christianity and replacing it with something. Everyone replaces it with something. You can see this even with kids raised in a Christian home. They decide they don't like Christianity. Christianity is too judgmental. Christianity is too condemning. Christianity is too narrow-minded. I hate Christianity. I don't want anything to do with it. Get it away from me. And then go watch them. Then they're out there, they're on social media saying, that's wrong and that's wrong. Wait a minute. I thought you hated that about Christianity. They're judgmental. Maybe they decide, Christianity condemned the homosexual LGBTQ movement. So now they're a part of that movement. So now anyone who's opposed to homosexuality or LGBTQ, now they condemn them. Anyone who speaks against it, they condemn them. So they just replace one belief system, one basically religious structure with another one. Even though they claim it's not religious, it still has morality. It has people who are good, people who are bad. There's teaching that is the true doctrine. Anything that deviates from it is false doctrine. In many cases, they will silence anyone who doesn't believe like them. And it's just weird. They leave Christianity because it's so hateful and condemning, and they just replace it with something different. Why? Because everyone is created in the image of God. There's this sense of this need for a spiritual belief. There's this need for an understanding. They're trying to look. I'll borrow a little bit from Augustine. I'm not going to be quoting him exactly, but in a sense, there's this understanding inside every person. I think there's this need inside every person that truly can only be satisfied in their Creator. Look, if we are created by God, then we are created for God. And the only way to find purpose and meaning is in God. But if you throw out God, you're going to try to then find that purpose and that meaning in something else. And you're just going to replace God, Scripture, belief, faith. You're just going to replace it with a different system, a different purpose, a different meaning, a different system of right and wrong, a different system to try to explain the world. I think the so many people becoming so politically minded and breaking into political tribes and fighting one another. I think so many issues, people turning to social justice, whatever movement they're turning to, people turning to conspiracy theories. It's all a sign of a spiritual hunger that is deep inside human beings. And they're looking for something. But what they don't realize is they're just creating their own basically religious systems to try to satisfy where ultimately the only place they're ever going to truly be satisfied is by returning back to God, who is the creator. Because if he's the creator, then you can only find purpose in him, and you're only going to find purpose in living for him, and you're only going to find the answers in him. But if you reject that, you're going to run around creating your own religions. And that is what we are seeing. I don't care if it's social justice. I don't care if this idea of being woke, whatever words you want to use. It's just religious systems. It's just religious systems being created. And just look at the systems. They have a belief system. They have right. They have a system of morality. They have teaching. You have to go along with that teaching. If you violate that rule of teaching, then you're the heretic. There's condemnation. There's judgment. It's just religion. Look, you never get rid of religion. You only replace the religion you abandon with some other form of religion. And I want you to understand that is what is happening in our country. And one area that people have turned to is QAnon. QAnon, I keep saying, is not, I know some argue with me and say it's a political. No, it's a religious ideology. It's a religious belief system. You have the QAnon teachers. There's your kind of your priestly class, your clergy. You have Q drops. You have a message that has to be expounded, has to be interpreted. You have a belief system. You have the good guys. You have the bad guys. You have those who are condemned and those who are right. You have, in a sense, salvation and condemnation. It is a religious system. And you have to ask why have so many people felt like they've turned from Christianity and they've created these other religious systems. Now, we could talk a lot about why this has occurred, what has happened within Christianity to bring this about, but this is a very important perspective that I want you to really, really think about. And what we're going to do is I'm going to play this audio from a report. It's a report about basically, okay, QAnon, the whole QAnon conspiracy theory really has been proven to be false. So what happens to its followers? How are they going to respond? How did they react? And this kind of gives a timeline of kind of leading up with this reporter who's been talking to QAnon followers. QAnon, I'm going to call them believers, those who hold to the faith of QAnon. QAnon is a faith-based system. It is belief. It is a religious system. So those who hold to the QAnon faith, just like those who hold to the Christian faith, well, the QAnon faith, this is kind of a documentary, an audio documentary of some of these individuals. Now, some of these individuals have a problem with using explicit language. I'm going to do my best to try to mute the audio when I know it's coming up. There's some of it I know I'm going to miss, so just be warned. If you don't want to hear it, that's fine. By all means, look, don't listen and then get offended, all right? Don't listen and say, oh, there was a bad word. If you don't want to hear it, I completely understand. But I think we need to hear this because it's so powerful, because it's going to show you that for some of these individuals, doesn't matter. Their faith is unshakable. They will have faith in this. And it shows not only that QAnon is a faith-based system, it also shows the utter sadness and tragedy of people who are, I don't even know what words to use, people who are deceived, people who are blinded, people who have abandoned what I believe to be the truth of Scripture and the truth of believing in God, God the Father, the creator of heaven and earth, and his only begotten Son, who was, conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died and buried, rose the third day, ascended to the right hand of the Father, from which he will come to judge the living and the dead, who've abandoned historical biblical Christianity for these alternate religions, but no matter, they're so deceived, and it is tragic and it is sad. And I hope you will see it this way. So let's just jump in and let's listen to as much of this audio as we can. I think this is important. I know there's other things we need to be talking about today, and I know I'm supposed to be on the air right at 10 o'clock, but just bear with me because I think this is very important, all right? This is very important. And I think this will connect with what I wanted to do for Sunday school. So we may go to this and then jump right into Sunday school and then pick it up, and you'll see how this all will fit together. This will all make sense at some point before the day is over. Are you ready? This comes to us from The Daily podcast. It's called The Daily. They cover, now you can say, well, they're liberal. I'm not here to get into whether they're liberal or whether they're conservative, right versus left. That again, that's the religion of politics. I just want to look at this because these reporters were having ongoing conversations with people involved in QAnon. And I want you to hear how all of this plays out. Here we go. It's called A Conspiracy is Proved Wrong. This aired a couple of days ago. I heard it, midnight, 1 a.m. I don't know what time it was. And I want you to hear some of this. All right, here we go.
In the days leading up to Joe Biden's inauguration on January 20th, as my colleagues in Washington were getting ready to go cover the inauguration, I was checking in with the followers of QAnon.
Boom! What's up, guys? Welcome to another show. We're here on Monday morning, January 18th. Only a couple of days left until Inauguration Day, or whatever the heck might actually happen on that day.
Basically, people who believe in this QAnon conspiracy theory had locked into that date, January 20th.
We're all waiting in anxious anticipation to see what this week might bring, aren't we?
Which they saw as kind of the final deadline, the true culmination of all of these beliefs and predictions they've been talking about for the last 3 years.
I don't know, I feel in my gut that something's going to happen, and we go from there.
They were promised that Joe Biden would not actually be inaugurated that day.
Trump can call martial law even up to 5 minutes before Biden's inauguration if he has to wait that long.
Donald Trump would declare martial law and reveal all of these shocking and terrible government secrets, and that Trump himself would get inaugurated for a second term.
The shot heard around the road is going to be when they arrest Biden right there on stage.
While Joe Biden would get arrested.
Either they're going to arrest him on stage, he's going to come out and say that the election was fraudulent, or something's going to happen and they're not going to be able to do the inauguration.
And the thing I was trying to figure out is, when that doesn't happen, when Joe Biden is inaugurated in contradiction of all of these prophecies that QAnon had believed, what would the millions of people who have been expecting this to happen do?
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Today, my colleague, Kevin Roos, on what happens to a conspiracy theory and its followers when it's proven wrong.
I mean, even if we don't get our way, we're going to get our way one way or another after that.
It's Friday, January 29th.
And when you hear words like that, even if we don't get our way, we're going to get our way. Well, it just shows you even how scary and dangerous these kind of conspiracy theories are. Look, deception and misinformation is always dangerous. And when you have people buying in and believing into a false system, leads to horrible actions, which at many cases lead to, death and destruction. It's just the whole thing about QAnon is tragic. The whole thing of the American Christian church buying into conspiratorial thinking and the American Christian church buying into politics, to me, is a condemnation of the spiritual apathy that was in the church. Look, this is what I believe happened. The church had become so spiritually apathetic that Christians were tired, were basically, look, we're not here to please God anymore. We're tired with God. We're bored with God. Give us something more exciting. We want politics. We want to fight the world in a political way. Give me a conspiracy theory, because just Jesus, prayer, Bible, church, living out my Christian life, I want something better. And I think this whole mess is a condemnation upon the American church. I believe that, and strongly, and I could talk more about that as well. Now, again, they're playing clips from a lot of people they interviewed. I'm going to do my best to catch. I know where one section is, and I'm going to definitely be able to mute the mic for that one. But every time someone talks, I'm getting nervous, like, oh no, this is one I didn't catch. So I'm going to do my best. Just, again, be warned, there could be some explicit language here. I don't want anyone getting mad, but I want you to just hear this, because I think they do a very good job. Let's continue.
Kevin, why is January 20th such a make or break moment for believers in the QAnon conspiracy theory?
QAnon at its core is a deeply date-driven belief system. So just to recap, Cliff Notes version, QAnon is this big sprawling conspiracy theory about this global cabal of satanic pedophiles who run the world. No basis in fact. It's totally made up. But it got started in 2017 when Q, this anonymous message board poster who claimed to be a high-level government insider, started posting these cryptic clues on a message board about what was going to happen. Basically, unspooling this theory about how Donald Trump was secretly working to take down this cabal, and that there would be this day in the future, this moment of reckoning called the storm or the Great Awakening, when Trump would reveal his plan, expose the deep state cabal, and bring its members to justice.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, does anyone know, I don't know if this is measurable, how many people believe in this clearly false conspiracy of Q and his prophecies?
Well, it's hard to say exactly. I mean, they don't keep an official membership directory, but it's almost certainly in the millions. I mean, Facebook, Twitter, these other companies that have taken action against QAnon accounts have taken down pages and groups with millions of members between them. So this is not like a small fringe movement anymore. And what's interesting is that it's continued to grow really rapidly, even though from the start, lots of the predictions that Q was making weren't coming true. Like the very first Q post in 2017 predicted that Hillary Clinton was about to be arrested. And that didn't happen, obviously.
And how do these people rationalize that?
Well, mostly they tell themselves, we must have misinterpreted the clue. Maybe the clue wasn't wrong. Maybe we just weren't smart enough or savvy enough to understand what date Q really meant.
It's on us, not Q.
Exactly.
Now, again, you see the faith element. The Q drops prophecies. Oh, we didn't interpret it correctly. Q couldn't be wrong. Q couldn't be wrong. We have faith in Q. It's us, our lack of ability to interpret. If you don't see the religious structure in this, if you don't see the religious element, it was a faith. And I want you to understand, you had churches who would take Q drops and then try to interpret them from the pulpit. Why? Because the church, I cannot stress this enough. The reason the church turned so much to Trump and to politics and to QAnon is because Christians abandoned Christ. They're like, Christ is in other words, they were no longer satisfied with Christ. Christ wasn't sufficient. Christ wasn't enough. The Bible wasn't sufficient. The Bible wasn't enough. Hearing the word of God preached wasn't enough. Prayer, fasting, praise, no, we need more. And we want to get caught up into this whole, we're going to change the world through political means and this whole conspiracy theory to take down this evil cabal, the satanic plot, and Trump's going to save us. And it was like, what happened to the church? The spiritual apathy Look, all the fun, food, and fellowship that the church gave people didn't satisfy them, so they were looking for something more. You always end up looking for something more when you don't find your contentment in God. And they looked for something else, and that's how you ended up with this. It's a new faith, and that's why a lot of the Trumpism and QAnon was mixed with Christianity, because it was Christians who weren't satisfied with God, who wanted something else. And now people say, no, it wasn't that. It's just, I was worried about the world. And so you look to the fleshly means to try to fix the world. Where did you find that in Scripture? This is a faith. QAnon is a faith. These are people who are spiritually hungry, and while the church church wasn't providing anything for them. In many cases, they started looking to these other things. That's the part of this that we have to see. That's the part of this narrative we have to consider. And I just want to remind everyone, those of us who were warning about QAnon and warning about QAnon, it clearly became a big deal and people should have been paying attention, but the church didn't want to hear any warnings about QAnon. No, Christianity just wanted to ignore it. Well, yeah. See how that played out.
So these QAnon prophecies, they come and go, and the goalposts get moved and the explanations get reformulated. But one of the big setbacks for QAnon happens in November of last year when, to their great surprise, Donald Trump loses the election. QAnon believers had been told that Trump would win re-election in a landslide, and so they were confused, but they still had an out because there was still this theory, this unfounded theory that the election had been stolen, and that, when the truth about election fraud and other various conspiracy theories came out, they would be vindicated and Trump would indeed become a two-term president.
So even this, the greatest setback to date, is somehow rationalized, incorporated into the Q belief system as something that can be explained.
Right. But all of this is sort of made more confusing and complicated by the fact that after the election, Q, this anonymous message board account that posts these cryptic clues, basically disappears. There are a couple posts since the election, but Q used to post, 10, 20 times a day. And now these posts, these sort of clues that help people in the movement understand what's happening, they're basically gone. Q just disappears, stops posting, doesn't really address the election at all. And so that creates a power vacuum in the QAnon community.
And
again, you have your if Q's gone, then what happens? Where do we find our answers? Where do we find our answers? Where do we find our revelation? Where do we find our scripture? I mean, again, if you don't see the faith elements in this, it's just all over it. And I've been arguing for a while that this is a faith. This is not political. It's faith. This is a religious system created in many cases and followed and supported and promoted by those within the Christian world. Well, you already supposedly have a faith, right? But no, I guess you were just bored with God, and so you needed this. All right, let's continue. And again, he's getting ready. I think the first place where we're going to have to mute the mic for a second, or mute them for a second, is when he contacts this woman that he's been talking to in regards to this. I think that's the first place where we have the first major issue. But I'm prepared. I got my hand here ready to try to mute this when we get close to it. Here we go.
What is the reaction among followers?
Well, some of them think that this is, part of the plan, that Q has sort of gone incommunicado because things are heating up, or, there are various ways to sort of explain why Q has disappeared. But what ends up happening is that instead of drawing their guidance from Q, people in this movement start looking to these kind of influencers in the movement, these people who sort of aren't Q or who they don't believe are Q, but who sort of speak with authority about what's happening in this progression toward the storm or the Great Awakening.
Basically, they look to the apostles of the Q movement. Hey, well, Q's not giving us any information, but we need to the leaders, to the influencers, to the apostolic teaching of Q. This is so crazy. This is so crazy. Let's continue.
And so where do these new influencers guide QAnon followers?
Well, they start to point people to another date, January 6th, the day Congress is supposed to certify the results of the election.
And how do Q supporters start to think about that date? What's supposed to happen?
So QAnon believers spend weeks leading up to January 6th convincing themselves and each other that Joe Biden is not going to be certified as the winner of the election by Congress, that maybe Mike Pence will step in and block it, or maybe patriots will take to the streets themselves and sort of convince Congress not to certify the election results, that all of this is going to somehow end in a reversal of what's been happening and that Donald Trump will actually be declared the winner.
Well, one slice of that, of course, does materialize. People do storm the Capitol, including, as we now know, QAnon supporters, but they fail. And, of course, Joe Biden's victory is certified. So how do QAnon supporters absorb that news?
Well, the reaction among QAnon believers to January 6th was kind of mixed and confused. Like, there were believers who said, like, yeah, this was us. We did this. But there were also people who said, no, this wasn't us.
All right, can you hear me?
Okay, now this is the woman he's getting ready to interview where she has a problem with using explicit language, all right? So the big one happens at I have it written down here, at the 10-minute, 56-second mark. 10 minutes, 56-second mark. That's the one I'm going to definitely try to catch. I hope there's not more, but just be prepared, all right? They don't edit their podcast to remove explicit language. They offer a warning on the site, and so I'm offering you the warning. But here we go. Let's listen to this. But just please note, in fact, I know this. I've had QAnon supporters contact me telling me that what happened on January the 6th were not actually QAnon followers who infiltrated the Capitol. They were the Illuminati. That's what I'm being told now. And just please note, no matter what happens, their faith the scales won't drop from their eyes for them to wake up and realize you've bought into a fraudulent religious system. You've been deceived. And I feel horrible for the people who've been deceived. It's discouraging. It's depressing. But let's listen to this woman. It's hard for me to listen to this because you're just like, what? How do you end up here? How do you not end up here? But let's listen to what she has to say. And again, I'll try to. I'm going to keep my finger here on the input for her audio. So at any point, if I need to drop the audio out, if you hear the audio drop quickly, it's because I'm trying to mute the use of explicit language. Here we go.
Yeah. Great. So, catch me up a little bit. I mean, when we last talked...
And I heard some of that kind of mixed feeling about the riots when I called up a source of mine, this woman I had been talking to for more than a year who believes in QAnon. She lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. She's a middle-aged white woman, went to Harvard. Her name is Valerie Gilbert. And I called her after the riots and sort of asked her what she thought had happened.
Please note, she went to Harvard. Okay, so this is not conspiratorial thinking. In many cases, has nothing to do with the amount of education one has. Now, there's some studies that show the more education you have, the least likely you are to buy into this. But there's educated people who got caught up into this. Educated people. Now, here's the thing, because I believe, and I'm going to go back with my point. This is about spirituality. There's this spiritual part of us that longs for purpose, for meaning, for understanding. And when we turn from God, we replace it with a different religion. And if she, I don't know what her belief system is, but clearly whatever it is, she has replaced it with QAnon, the faith of QAnon as a faith system. That is what is fascinating to me about this account. But let's listen to her talk about what she thinks about what happened on January the 6th and we'll try to be ready for when she decides to use some strong language. Here we go.
Like, what were you thinking as you were watching them? Like, what was going through your mind?
I don't believe those were Q people. I don't know one violent Q person. I don't know one Q person who advocates violence.
I mean, there were, people, on the ground who I follow, who I've been following for a long time, who were there posting. I mean, I can give you some names, but there were, there were people posting things like, "This is the storm."
Yes, and so look, maybe some of them were. I can't say who is or who isn't. I'm not following all of them, but overall, I don't. While I want to see justice served and treachery to the United States government exposed, I don't know who's who and who can definitively say that. There is a lot of spy versus spy going on,
and see, this is what, whenever you deal with people into conspiratorial thinking, that's why I've stopped. I sadly, when people email me, I'll just look and go, there's no, what's the point of even trying? No matter what he points out, there's all these QAnon people that he's been following. He's been investigating Q for years, but he can give her names. He can give her examples, but none. I don't follow these people. I don't know. And anytime there's someone who has been giving me QAnon kind of ideas, and if I respond to them and say, well, what about, there's always like, well, I don't really believe in QAnon anyway. Well, you did. But then they'll continue later on showing you that they did believe in QAnon. They still hold to some of the QAnon ideas. No matter what you confront them with, they just continue on and on, like a strong follower of a faith. It's a faith system, all right? But no matter what he can do, he's not going to change her mind. He's not going to convince her, and that is sad. That is sad. And it's sad that many Christians fell into this nonsense. Right? And many Christians would not even take the warnings that me and other podcasters were giving. I don't know how. Look, most of the responses I get with QAnon stuff are from people who are in QAnon. The rest of the people are like, whatever, I don't care about that. He's just talking about that conspiracy theory. Has nothing to do with me. Has everything to do with me because it infiltrated Christianity. Christianity created the environment that made QAnon possible because QAnon was very much connected in many cases to Christianity. That is the point I kept trying to warn everyone about. It's an alternate form of Christianity, but in many cases promoted, supported by Christians. Now, not everyone. Obviously, there were very non-religious people a part of QAnon. Obviously, when you get into the millions, you're always going to have that. But I think a large portion of it was driven by Christians who, for some reason, were discontent with Christianity and wanted something else. They still wanted Christianity, but they added something else to it. It's deception. It's sad. All right, Let's do this. I gotta be ready for her when she's about to use strong language. Here we go.
Infiltration.
She said maybe it's Antifa, maybe it's not, but she said that it didn't shake her faith.
Does it bother you that that Q has sort of vanished? I mean, I think he's posted once, three times.
It doesn't bother me. The whole Q was to inspire thought, and it did that. It sparked a movement.
In QAnon, there's this saying...
And the bottom line is, trust the plan.
Trust the plan. And that's sort of what they tell each other after these setbacks. They say, trust the plan.
I'm not one of the planners. I'm not in Team Q. I don't know.
There's a plan, and maybe we don't understand what it is yet or when it's going to happen, but there is a plan, and it's going to happen, so don't lose faith. And that's basically where she had landed.
So I get the fact. There are so many things line up. Then you're like, okay, you know what? I don't know. But I think, the wheels of justice grind slowly. And I think what we are going to see when it's all systems go, whenever the hell that is revelation, declassification of some pretty horrible stuff that people are going to be surprised by.
I mean, it's not all that dissimilar from how some people in religious communities feel about the second coming or the apocalypse. I mean, there have been lots of groups that have predicted things that have not come to pass, and they don't lose faith after it. They just reformulate the belief and keep going.
And I had to mute the mic there a little bit. I muted probably about 7 or 8 seconds there to just make sure that we could stay away from the big words that she used. But bottom line is, she was like, look, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, but I still believe, and some information is going to come out. And again, no matter how many setbacks, she still believes. It's straight up a alternate faith. It's an alternate religion. It's a religious system. When people move away from Christianity, they replace Christianity with another religious system, even though they don't want to say it's religious, even if they want to say it's atheistic, materialistic, whatever, agnostic, whatever. Look at how it's structured. There's a system of morality. There's a system of leaders. Look at even atheists. Here's my teachers. There will be popular atheistic authors, and then listen to those atheists talk. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. You're stupid. That's condemned. That's condemned. We always mankind will always create religious systems to fill that need for basically a religious understanding, something that transcends, something that explains everything, something that gives purpose, and something that gives meaning. When you don't want God to give you purpose and meaning and morality, you replace purpose, meaning, and morality that you get from God with something else. It's just, in many cases, a religious system that you create. And QAnon is just a religious system. It's what it is. Trumpism, the whole preoccupation with everyone, Trump, and this almost religious allegiance to him was a religious system. And then many people try to attach it to Christianity. This is crazy. Let's listen to a little bit more of this. All right? I want you to hear all of this. It's just so sad. By the time this thing ends, by the time the audio here ends, it's just depressing. Because these people, it's just so sad. But let's listen to a little bit more of this, because on the day of the inauguration, you talk about alternate realities. It's crazy to hear what happened. And there may be one word that I'm not going to catch because I don't know where it takes place. But we'll see. Here we go.
What if you're wrong? What if Biden is inaugurated on the 20th? What if Trump fades into public life? What if Q never comes back? Like, what if this whole thing was fake?
I don't anticipate that. But if that comes to pass, then I will deal with that, and that's how I roll.
Like, what would dealing with it look like?
All right, he's still talking to her. I'm going to be careful.
We can talk about that if it comes to pass.
She doesn't, if it comes to pass that all of this is not true, I'll deal with it. Well, when he talks to her at the end, she's still committed.
January 20th.
All right, they're going to do a commercial here. We'll wait for them to come back in. It's just sad to hear these people they're so deceived by the system.
Even when we have to be apart, Salesforce is finding.
All right, we'll wait for the commercial to come back in, and then it's gonna pick up on the day of the inauguration. And what I think is crazy is the way he describes it. Is he has these sets of monitors, and on one set of monitors he's looking at reality, the real world. On the other set of monitors, he's talking to all these QAnon people, following all these QAnon people who are talking a completely separate reality. And when you get two realities, that's when things go really bad.
Tell me about January 20th as you experienced it.
Yeah, so I have 2 monitors in my home office, and one of them...
The presidential inauguration from the U.S. Capitol. Live coverage all day.
I was tuned to a live stream on YouTube of Joe Biden being inaugurated. And on the other one...
What's going on the internet buzz, guys? You got some links to send over? Come on now, let's do some research. Let's see what's going on behind the scenes.
I had arranged all these QAnon chat rooms and Telegram groups and Facebook groups, and basically trying to sort of have one reality on one screen and the other reality on the other screen.
And today on the west front of the Capitol, it's the inauguration of the 46th...
Hey, just wait for mainstream media to get really confused, like they don't know how to cover this. That's when you know it's gone off script.
Now, this marks the 59th time in our nation's history that this transfer of power
I
has
just
happened.
really hope and pray that he signs over everything to the military. I want the military in complete control.
Right, literally split screen realities of the world.
Right.
And tell me what you see.
So the day starts off very hopeful for these QAnon believers.
Yeah, you kind of just got to look at all the things Trump's put into play, and it's kind of lining itself out, you know?
They're looking for symbols, like Trump gives his sort of going away speech, and they see that he has 17 flags behind him.
He's got something up his sleeve.
17 is sort of like a magic number in QAnon because Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet.
He's giving us hints right here.
So they say like, oh, he's sending a signal that this is the day that Trump is going to declare martial law and invoke the Insurrection Act and announce the mass arrest of all these elite pedophiles.
It would be hilarious if Trump did the emergency broadcasting in the middle of the inauguration. That would be hilarious.
As inauguration started, politicians, walk in, take their seats. These people that they believe are members of this global cabal of criminals, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, they're all in one place.
I got the popcorn ready.
I'm optimistic.
It's almost like it's the moment of truth.
So as you're watching this, you're seeing people continue to speculate, like, any second now, this is going to happen, this is going to happen.
Any second now. One person on a QAnon message board writes, the next 48 hours will be like the entire Revolutionary War and the fall of Berlin compressed into 2 days. I have called off work so I can witness history in the making. What a time to be alive. And then, as noon approached, and Joe Biden was getting ready to actually take the oath of office and get sworn in as the president, they started to get a little nervous.
What's your heart say, guys?
My heart wants faith. My head says we're screwed.
Listen to your heart.
I think we all want to cry.
Sick to my stomach. Very sick to my stomach.
Chin up, hold the line. It ain't over yet. We'll know after 12 o'clock. If he gets in there, we'll see what happens then.
People just sort of trying to tell themselves that there was still time. Something could still happen.
Will to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
And then,
Preserve, protect, and defend.
as soon as Joe Biden took the oath of office,
Of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
and was officially the president, and Donald Trump was officially no longer the president, the mood really shifted.
I don't know what to believe anymore.
I feel like we've all been played.
Think of all the people that we follow and trust that, have told us about Q and explained the drops. That's really the heartbreaking part.
They were getting despondent. People were saying, we've been played like fools. It's over.
I'm tired of this. Everything that we read, we're chasing dreams. I'm exhausted, wore out, tired of chasing hopes and dreams and realizing that none of them are coming true. So,
granted, this wasn't everyone. There were still some people who said, I still trust the plan. I'm still holding out, but a lot of people were getting very disillusioned.
on behalf of the moderation team,
they were leaving the group chats.
Keep faith, stay strong. We're working on some stuff in the back channel.
Some of the big QAnon message boards had so many people sort of posting about their doubts and their disillusionment that they started banning these people who they called doomers.
I want you to hear that. People get upset if Twitter shuts down a QAnon site, but if you're on a QAnon site and you start saying, hey, I'm doubting all of this, you're called a doomer and you get banned. So much for freedom of speech. So no. Now you got to stay in line with the QAnon. You got to go, or you get excommunicated. I'm telling you, it is a faith. All of the QAnon situation, all of the political, everyone running to politics, it's because there was a spiritual apathy in the Christian church. Christians were done with God, and even though they would never say that, they were bored. They didn't want the Bible. They didn't want that. They wanted something else, and they turned to politics and everything else. I have been saying this for so long. This is simply the world, a secular podcast, simply supporting and proving everything that I have been saying. And if you go way back to those podcasts, I kept talking about there was this spiritual deadness, this spiritual apathy in the Christian church. Well, and then that gave ultimately rise to all of this political hijacking and conspiratorial whacked out thinking. Yeah, okay, we're going to have to stop here. We'll listen just a few more seconds.
So you weren't allowed to post anything negative about QAnon, but that couldn't contain this feeling that a lot of them were having that they had been lied to and betrayed, and that actually there wasn't a plan.
Mm-hmm. So this theory that always seems to get reinvented, justified, explained, rationalized, all of a sudden there are people who are suddenly acknowledging we can't defend this. This is not real.
Yeah, the scales fell from their eyes. And then, later that afternoon, a couple hours after inauguration, this guy, Ron Watkins, who used to run the site that Q posted on, some people have suspected that he actually posted as Q himself. He posts this message to his Telegram channel. He writes, "We gave it our all. Now we need to keep our chins up and go back to our lives as best we are able. As we enter into the next administration, please remember all the friends and happy memories we made together over the past few years."
That does not sound like a believer. That sounds like somebody admitting it was all wrong.
Yeah, it was very weird. It was kind of like, the real Q was the friends we made along the way. It was it had a very last day of summer camp feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the biggest, most prominent figures in the QAnon movement. And he's basically saying sorry, better luck next time.
What is the reaction to Watkins' post?
There's a lot of anger. People are furious. I think it's important to understand that this is not a small part of these people's lives. This is not I had a fantasy football team that I really hoped was going to win the game and they didn't win the game. People have lost years of their lives to this movement. And as I was watching these QAnon believers kind of turn on the influencers in their movements, I was thinking about my conversations with Valerie Gilbert.
I don't want to talk to people that think I'm crazy.
All right, we'll have to stop right there. She goes on, basically says she doesn't want to talk to anybody. She stopped talking to her sister. She stopped talking to anyone who told her she's wrong. She stopped talking to them because she doesn't want to hear from anyone else. This is a faith. It's a religious system that doesn't want truth, that doesn't want facts. And that's because there is a spiritual hunger inside the world because the world has abandoned God, has abandoned their creator. So they look for another religious system, and you see it. Look, whenever you see people, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a fight for social justice. It doesn't matter if it's a preoccupation with LGBTQ, whatever. They're done with Christianity, and now they're turned to something else. Well, a lot of people, even within Christianity, even though they never would have said they're done with Christianity, demonstrated that they were not satisfied with God or content with God, and they turned to conspiratorial thinking and the political hijacking of the American church. This is a symptom of the spiritual hunger that is present. And I am going to stand by that idea. And I think it's something that we have to consider and something that we have to look at. And the church has to get back to offering people something of substance. Getting people back to know what you need is to understand your Creator. Your purpose is found in Him. Your meaning is found in Him. Your morality is found in Him. That's what you should have never have abandoned that, especially those who are Christians who got caught up in this. Those who are not Christians who get caught up in so many different aspects of the world and their fake religious systems. They're going to have to realize that those religious systems are not going to answer their problems, not going to satisfy them, and it's going to ultimately leave them disillusioned and empty. And we saw this, if you think about it, we saw this in the 60s, where a lot of people tuned in, dropped out, whatever the little hippie slogan was in the 60s. They all did that. And then ultimately, all of what they hoped for, and a lot of times it's described this way, all of their hopes and what they wanted to change the world and how they wanted the world to live, and from their hippie philosophy. And in a sense, a lot of people say that all kind of just washed away in the muddy field there in Woodstock. After Woodstock, the hippie movement kind of evaporated. And what kind of arose out of that hippie movement? You had the Jesus movement, where you had to say, look, this didn't work. Let's turn back to God. Let's turn back to Christ. Now, you could argue the theology of that movement, but that people became disillusioned. Now, some people did not go back to Christianity. They just moved on to a different philosophy in life. This is a sign of the spiritual hunger that is within the culture. And that is something that we need to address further. I apologize. I had to kind of throw all of that together, but I wanted to at least address this, and this will fit perfectly for what we're getting ready to do now. Now we'll turn our attention in the next live broadcast back to the Niagara Creed, where we're going to talk more about the depravity of man, which is where all of this stems from. So, all right, we'll stop right there. I wish I could play the rest of it for you. He continues to talk to her, but basically the woman there he talks to, she's still committed. She still believes it's all going to work out. She still believes information is going to be released that's going to shock the world, and that, I don't know, maybe she still believes that Trump is going to still be put for a second term. She still believes basically, that it's all the election was fake and it's all a hoax, and Q is still true, and no matter, I guess, how much information, but she won't listen to anyone who gives her any false information. She doesn't want to listen to anyone. I think she even talks about how her relationship with her sister has ended because she won't listen to anyone who tries to help her. That's this deception at a staggering level. And again, the message I received this morning from someone in QAnon is that what has happened is the Illuminati has infiltrated, and that's what's going on. And right now there's a time of confusion. How about your whole system was fraudulent and fake, and understand you're looking for something true. You're looking for something that will give meaning and purpose, and you're only going to find that in your Creator. That's where you need to turn. So it's a sad situation. All right, I'll stop right there. I'll be back on the air here shortly. You can contact me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com.